Regardless of the Democratic nominee, 18 states plus the District of Columbia have voted blue for a total of 242 electoral votes. Remember, it takes 270 to win. 13 states have consistently voted red in those last 6 elections, for a total of just 102 electoral votes. This has to do with population density, and it's a fact that has conservative commentator George Will shitting his slacks. Check out that link here. But many of the states that for one reason or another didn't go 6 for 6, like say Arkansas because Bill Clinton happened to be from there, those are actually red states. So if we redo the red-blue distribution with more realistic expectations of the way people will actually vote, what we get is 247 electoral votes for the Democrats versus 206 for the Republicans. This means that Democrats need just 23 electoral votes from toss-up states, while the GOP needs 64 electoral votes from those same states in order to ensure a victory. It also shows how really there are only very few true toss-up states left. Red states vote red, blue states vote blue. This happens with extreme consistency. And when that happens, Democrats, regardless of the nominee, have a distinct electoral vote advantage. So stop worrying that Bernie can't win the general. No state flips from blue to red due to the Democratic nominee. It just doesn't happen. We're talking about 2.5 decades of research here. See, imagine the person who says, oh, I would have voted for Hillary, but now that the nominee is Bernie, I'm going to vote for Jeb Bush or Scott Walker or Ted Cruz. This person is a fiction. Second, Bernie is not actually as far to the left as many people think. Now, you can compare him to Eisenhower, Nixon, and even Ronald Reagan on many points in this book to see just how moderate he stacks up. But also I want to point out his recent comments on immigration, for example. Bernie wants a path to citizenship for those people who are already here. He does not want an unbridled influx of more immigrants. In late July, he even told that to an Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. He then repeated it to Ezra Klein in a clip that you can see here. On gun rights, he voted to prohibit foreign aid that restricts U.S. gun ownership, to prohibit suing gun makers for others' gun misuse. He even voted yes on allowing firearms in checked baggage aboard Amtrak. This is a guy who can capture the interest of more conservative people than you might think. Even his more leftish ideas, though, say free state college tuition, he plans to pay for not by taxing you and me. Bernie has ingeniously proposed a plan that will tax, in a very tiny way, what's known as high-frequency trades on Wall Street. These are trades that are run more or less by bots that make money for people who are already super wealthy, and it just moves things around in a microscopic way. This is something that actually destabilizes markets. It's just no good for anybody. Now, think about this. The tiny tax from this would generate $185 billion over 10 years. It's so microscopic that, for example, on a $100,000 trade, the tax would be just $10. What's too far to the left about that? See, we need your help in getting the word out about things like that. And if you think abandoning the message makes sense because it might never be heard over the din of super PAC attack ads, then you've already really given up on democracy, haven't you? A third counter to the idea of Bernie's too far left status lies in his election record. Bernie has won some of the most conservative districts in Vermont elections over the years. And how? With straight talk and sensible ideas. He's not hiding anything, and he doesn't equivocate. Many people on the right are drawn to exactly qualities like that in their leaders. This one just happens to actually be looking out for their best interests. In fact, I think Bernie could even appeal to some on the far right. Some in the Tea Party might see a kindred spirit, an angry elder white guy with no bullshit rhetoric. He's the experienced, policy-savvy, moral version of Donald Trump in a bizarro world funhouse mirror kind of way. He doesn't flip-flop, and he'll speak bluntly to you, attributes that win in circles where anger at the status quo rules the day, and regular folk want to hear clear-stated policy ideas. To further illustrate this, look at how Bernie is going right into red states like Louisiana, Texas, and Arizona, so-called enemy territory, and drawing tens of thousands of people to his rallies. Now, one more point to address the concern that Bernie is just too risky a choice. Though I have pledged to never bash Hillary during this whole process, there's just too much at stake here. There are many, many people who see her as a deeply controversial figure in her own right. A July 30th Quinnipiac poll found that 57% of voters think Hillary is not honest and trustworthy. She could be destabilized at any moment, unfairly and by Republican spin. But we do need to lay our cards down and acknowledge that Hillary and Bernie are both gambles to some extent. Between concerns over her use of private email while Secretary of State and possible foreign donor conflicts of interest for her nonprofit org, Hillary is not immune to a campaign extinction level event if the right Republican political consultant finds the sweet spot to attack her in the right way at the right time. You must at least weigh this reality against whatever you think may be unstable about Bernie's campaign. Concern number 2. Two of the very things you like most about Bernie will defeat him. First, Bernie doesn't have the money or the political machine behind him. To this I say, the old way of doing things was to woo super wealthy interests and return favors once elected. This buys campaign advertising, including televised ads, direct mail, saturation bombing, expensive polling, expert consultancy, and inside baseball of every kind, basically. The new way of doing things? Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. If you think I'm kidding, you need to read this book by Jon Ronson. The power of Twitter to shame, to raise awareness, to motivate, to connect people and ideas cannot be overstated. Twitter is the national conversation. People are fired. Some take their own lives, I hate to say. State house flags come down. Marriage laws are rewritten. Policing practices fall under nationwide scrutiny. Social media changes public opinion. And it's free. And when a campaign like Bernie's needs things that aren't free, that vast social network rises to action. Just think of the 100,000 people who came together on July 29th for Bernie's campaign kickoff, across the country in small and not so small gatherings. If a $20 donation had been suggested in any kind of way at all, it wasn't, of course, but say it had, that would have raised $2 million in just one night. Think about it. There's plenty of money when people give a shit. The obvious upside? Bernie is not beholden to the chosen few moneyed interests, period. And this very idea, in turn, supercharges the volunteerism and boots on the ground willing to spread the word at phone banks, door to door, and at huge campaign rallies across the nation. We've seen it. In Minnesota, 5,000 people. Colorado, 6,000. Wisconsin, 10,000. Arizona, 11,000 people. This is you and me doing this. This is true democracy. And that's something you can't put a price on because by definition, it can't be bought. And as this 2009 analysis from the Center for American Progress shows, millennials make up 36% of the voting bloc in 2016. That's nearly 40%. And you know what? Their ideas are very progressive. These folks, well, they don't watch TV. So keep your multi-million-dollar attack ads. This exponentially growing new community is way more connected and powerful than any of that. Okay, your second concern that what you like about Bernie might just defeat him may go something like this. Bernie speaks truth to power, and those powers, multinational corporations, global banks, people who trade money for a living, offering nothing really, just existing solely to increase their own obscene wealth, these forces will try to crush our man with everything they've got. But think about what you're really saying. To vote for a candidate out of fear who appeases those who would destroy him or her if they strayed too far from the gross, ever-ballooning self-interests of the moneyed overclass is to submit and admit to an already lost democracy. A vote in fear is not really a vote. It's an affirmation of oligarchy. And answer this. What exactly are they going to do to Bernie? Those forces don't exercise their vote through the franchise. They build a candidate during the campaign, and they let the oligarchy reign after the election. But what do they do when a candidate can't be bought? How do they bring him down? How precisely do they exact retribution for not following the rules of the oligarchy? I think we're looking at 4 basic ways. Let's address each. Tactic 1. Obviously, withhold campaign financing. This one almost doesn't need addressing. Bernie is not interested in taking this money. That's the whole point. He's going out of his way to steer clear of this influence. Tactic number 2, try to block his messages. By trying to keep voters from knowing Bernie and understanding his policy ideas, they can undermine his support, goes the argument. Well, the media is already being told by their corporate overlords to by and large ignore this candidate. And I need only point out once again the campaign rally stats to suggest to you that this isn't exactly working. Bernie has had the biggest attendance at an event of any candidate, red or blue, in the 2016 campaign so far, and that was in red Arizona. Tactic number 3, wage war with nasty attack ads. Well, this is a given, regardless of the Democratic nominee, and I suggest to you that Bernie could very well hold up much better. His unflinching convictions over decades of policymaking no doubt provide ballast to weather this storm. Bernie will fare a lot better than the typical candidate who is always looking over their shoulder for how what they said might be interpreted later to be used against them. Tactic number 4, rig the vote. We all know by now that to the extent big money can, they do try to undermine the public's access to the vote. The key point here is that this occurs regardless of the Democratic nominee. The right is not going to go easy on Hillary because she has more friendly corporate ties. They want a Republican in the White House, period. They did it famously in Bush v. Gore, and they did it to Obama with the disenfranchisement of minorities across the South. See, those were pre-packaged mainstream opponents. In 2000, the Supreme Court even forced that year's tragic criminal appointment of the executive office